Gorgeous lives, welcome to video number 2 in the complex soul level learning. Now, in the first video, I talked about, why we incarnate, karmic loop cycles, just a little bit, like just touched on things, why we repeat experiences. There's also something that else that has to actually come into play here as well. Human bodies are so unique. Our DNA coding, our fingerprints are as unique as who we are. Now, to actually understand that, you have to understand in that complexity that no human being on the planet has the same fingerprints. By the same token, no human being has the same soul level journey. There can be similarities, 100%, but there is a uniqueness that is belonging just to you in your interpretation, familial learning, self-learning, DNA coding, genetic links, and these all tie in experientially. So the one thing that I've also looked at as well is that the human body in its amazing DNA structure, it has all this coding that is an experiential coding that is stored in it that we can revisit generation after generation after generation. That includes basically traits, what we can actually look like. Also can do genetic links to illnesses or experiential illnesses, or odd random illnesses that come out of nowhere. So it's interesting to look at where that aspect, the human being aspect, the limitations of the human experience, and then you have the higher, more complex soul level learning that actually ties in, 100% ties in, because working with matter, so if we are working energy condensed into matter, then this matter has a kind of, what did you just call it? They just call it a pre-recorded kind of database, I love that, of scenarios and understanding, experiential learning, ancestral learning, all of that actually rolled in together as well. So, when it always amazes me when people come to see me and they go, tell me a little bit about myself. Crikey, your lineage, your ancestral learning, the wounds, the trauma, everything passed down generationally, on top of what your soul's here to learn, on top of experiential learning, on top of free choice. It's really sometimes I do, it kind of raised my eyebrows just a little bit in the nicest possible way when people say, just tell me something. Good grief, it's limitless how much information that you can actually go after that is actually stored in cellular memory, in the DNA coding, in the soul level programming. All of this is all combined in together. So it makes it incredibly complex in terms of kind of breaking it down, because our mind becomes very, very overwhelmed if we think, oh, this is tying into this, and this is tying into this, and why would I actually choose this experience? The bottom line is it all just ties back to growth and evolution. And I think probably at the end of the day, we underestimate this in the same way that we underestimate that the human body runs as an emotional being, and we're told to be logical and do this and do that. Well, there's 74,000 emotions. I mentioned it in the first video, and you are basically always trying to actually find either emotional equilibrium, and we do know in our current society as well, you're told to calm down, don't be too sensitive, don't be overreactive, don't. Well, it's like a pendulum. If you've got emotions that are on this side and they're really, really big, and you try and push them away into complete smothering it, pushing it down, telling yourself that you're too emotional, you're too this, the pendulum swings from here out to the other side. In reality, if you've got a lot of emotional experiences that you need to have at a soul level, the pendulum has to go that way, then swing back that way, until in its equilibrium it comes into middle ground. How does it come into middle ground? It comes into middle ground by having those experiences that teach you about the depth of emotions, the bandwidth of emotions, and all the little play-outs that go in between with everybody else, for you to learn to grow in who you are as a being. So, when I talk about the complexities, and I thought about this last night, I talked to the guys about it last night as well, it is really, really complex and subtle. That's the other thing they were talking to me about last night. There can be a subtle learning or a subtle understanding, and the epiphanies that you get along your journey as you kind of tie in with everybody else. So the types of epiphanies that actually you can learn from and you can grow from, and this even can start in childhood. And I remember actually talking to my oldest one when he was probably about 7 years old, and he had gone to school with his, and was at play with his little group of friends at the morning break, and he basically kind of got ganged up on by the bully, and the bully at that time was actually pulling people's underwears up at the back and kind of giving them what we call in New Zealand a wedgie. And he came home from school and he said to me, this was so horrible, they were so mean to me, and I cried and I was really embarrassed, and he was talking about how he actually felt in that moment. And I'm like, okay, well, look at the emotion, the balance of it for that horrible thing that happened to you, and it is really horrible. What is a good thing that actually came out of that balance? And he said to me, he said, oh, well, my friends come running over and one of them whacked that bully, and I felt really good that I had friends that looked after me. So this is what I mean about emotional equilibrium. We went into the seat of how awful the experience was, and how vulnerable, exposed, and hurt that we felt by the experience, to actually pendulum over to be able to see the benefits of the experience. And then it brings you into an emotional balance. He said something that happened there that I didn't like how it made me feel, but I learnt from it and grew from it because I can see this side of the equation, if you like. So very much Spirit gets me to look at it as it is an equational experience. For every good experience that you have, there is an equal corresponding experience that we'll have, and then it's your choice in the middle of all of that to actually decide where your equilibrium is in the middle. Now, halfway in the middle of all of this, and this is where this complex unravelling of what you grow and how you grow and how you evolve in situations, is with that understanding, is with that acknowledgement. But it keys at actually looking at your part of the equation and the other part of the equation, which human beings really don't like to do very well. We do actually like to say it was that other person's fault that they made me feel this way. Now, even when you think of it, when we say that, that person made me feel that way. That person was a tool from the universe to empower you, to get you to look at the emotion, to look at the feeling, and actually decide whether you're going to actually take it on board and go, it was my fault, or it's my issue and they caused me to feel like that, or understand part of the soul level evolution is to have that experience to decide in that moment whether you're actually going to take all of that on board, or whether you can actually look at the dynamic of where you grew from and understand that that person was just a tool in your evolution of understanding about yourself and teaching you about whether you will let yourself be put in those situations again, whether you will let yourself um, basically experience that situation again. So experiential learning down here is incredibly pivotal for soul level evolution. Now, someone said to me the other day, if I had I'll use one of the lives that I've had before that I learned so much from it. It was a really, really brief life. So one morning I was just about to get up and get out of bed when suddenly I just went kind of back into a life. Now, in this life, I was in probably like a medieval keep, to be perfectly honest, and I was a serf in that life. I was male, and I was probably about 19 years of age as well. Very threadbare clothes, and I knew that I was incredibly poor and a serf and a servant. And I remember going across this and sneaking across this very, very muddy, kind of courtyard, incredibly muddy and feeling incredibly cold. But what was drawing me was an amazing smell of freshly baked bread. So I was kind of sneaking into the keep, and I was so starving. I just really, really wanted one of those rolls, just bread rolls, because I could smell that smell. I could still vividly smell the smell. Anyway, so I snuck in and I stole. In those days, if you see, if you don't steal anything, you have an allocation of whatever scraps is deemed to actually go in your direction. So I stole this bread roll, and of course I got caught. But I was running back, and I could hear people yelling behind me, and I was running back, and I was running past a structure that was a basically a wooden mounting block. So a mounting block is where basically the ladies would come up in their big skirts, and they would come up this mounting block, and they would mount onto a horse and sit side saddle, and they would ride that way if they were privileged. So I was running across this courtyard, and I slipped, and I fell, and I hit my head here, at this part, kind of like this part of of the head, and I died. And as I was dying, I was thinking, what a pointless life, what a pointless life. And I kind of came back from that life as I died, and I said to the guys, oh my God, what a pointless life. I remember the anger, the frustration, the poverty, how unfair it felt, how ripped off I felt. All of these emotions, if you like, I can vividly feel them, and I keep touching my head and going, "Oh, crikey!" How did such a simple fall just actually end my life? And I said to the guys, I just quickly want to go back and kind of look at it from outside the body and just have a look. So I zoomed back to have a look at this life, and basically there was kind of my body in these raggedy, ripped clothes and everything, and a couple of kind of guards kind of looking at me as if to go, good grief, what the heck happened there? He was alive and he was running. And the bread roll, sorry, this is the bit that made me laugh, the bread roll is just like literally clutched in my hand. And so I came back and I talked to the guides, and I said, I don't get it. Why would I choose to have such a, in my mind, currently in the body that I'm in, such a stupid experience? And I go, there is no experience that is stupid. There's experiential learning. So, in part of an equation, if we look at it as an equation that I keep talking about, in this equation, had come in to learn about a hardship life. What was it like to incarnate with all those feelings, with all that unfairness? How did I deal with it? How did I view my life? And they said, now stop and kind of think about the value of it, not from a human perspective of the negativity of it, of why would I choose to have such an awful experience? Why would I choose to do this? They said there is value in learning this part of the equation, and value in learning this part of the equation. Experiential learning is absolutely huge. So it did explain something. I'm absolutely terrified of slipping over mud, any kind of mud, and I really don't like it when I lose my footing or anything like that. So having revisited the life as quickly as what I actually did, I now understand quite why I never like that losing my footing feeling, because stored in my DNA understanding and in my cellular understanding is the old, I call it the echo back of the memory of actually having passed at that period of time. So if you talk to some people, they go, oh, I've got a terrible fear of fire, or I've got a terrible fear of drowning, or I just don't like basically being in closed spaces. We understand in our genetic programming and in our soul level memories, which are usually stored in the body, by the way, as well as attached to the Akashic records, of course, on the other side. There was multiple areas where we're getting these little snippets and these little wisdoms of understanding that actually, all tie into our current level of understanding. Now, if you think about it this way and think, if I only had one lifetime experience, and I wouldn't get to have all these experiential understandings in different formats that roll out into this beautiful weaving tapestry of growth and evolution for at a soul level. Now, coming back to the surf life that I had, I struggled because the human part of me said, good grief, that's a terrible life. And they said, no, but think about it. Actually, go back and think of it from another perspective. Step out into the big picture because the soul never dies. It's just an experience. And think about the value of what you actually got from that as well. And I could feel how, kind of, even though I was very um, basically very thin and feeling like I was starving, I could still feel the wiry strength of the body, the enjoyment that I did have because there was still good times. There were getting together with, other servants. There was still laughter. There was still enjoyment. There was still creation. There was still those bits of joy. And they said, it is your choice whether I actually choose to focus on what I perceived as all the disharmony of that life, bearing in mind in humanity's existence on the earth plane for a very long period of time, we have had really chaotic rule. We relatively at the moment have had a fairly peaceful existence on the earth plane for about 200 years. So I think by nature, human beings actually only learn the hard way, and we do a lot of catalyst learning that I look at, where unless we're actually confronted with this harshness of learning, then we actually don't easily evolve into more understanding and more wisdom. And it's very much to do with the design of human beings because this part of our brain here is geared to fight or flight negativity. So we can actually look very fearfully at our own existences. Even now, in this age of technology, we still have a tendency to, one of the ones in the tools we can be manipulated by is a fear of dying. So we can get very, very caught up in the machinations of other people's manipulations, if you like, at a governmental level or whatever, by the simple way that human beings actually react as well. So this is what I mean when I'm talking about complex soul level learning. Unless you've got the ability to step back and not reason with yourself, and I'm bearing in mind that upstairs is chirping in constantly while I'm talking, it is about acceptance, it's about understanding the value, it's about being able to acknowledge and surrender to the emotional understanding of the growth that it gives you, without using these parts of our brain to actually take it all incredibly personally, blame that person for the whole rest of our lives around what we thought that they should have actually done for us as well. Now, interestingly, just using that surf life, I quickly, as I went back to have a look at it, from the observer point of view as well, I actually saw at least 5 people that I had from my current life actually in that lifetime through quick snippets, through looking at the aspects of the people around me in life. And interestingly, my sister in this life was actually kind of like my best friend in that environment as well. So had equally had a poverty lifetime, was male in that lifetime, but has an awful lot of learning from that lifetime as well. Doesn't necessarily mean that she remembers it. What was important for me to notice is the connections between the playouts, the soul level learning, the soul group, the agreements that we actually have with each other as well. So it becomes incredibly fascinating to actually look at the roles that we play with each other, what we actually bring into the depths of understanding. Now, one of the threads that I'll focus on as well is that I talked about common threads that people can experience, and I used 3 of my own, which was abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. So a lot of understanding that comes into at a personal level is where you have to deal with, say, your frustration that another person betrayed you or abandoned you or rejected you. And I keep hearing the song, and the lines of the song goes, "Why won't you love me?" And this is also part of our learning that at a soul level, we're also in the human experience to learn about loving ourselves more in acceptance, patience, tolerance, all of those sorts of things. So we don't actually talk about abandonment rejection and betrayal, please understand this. No one will abandon me as much as I abandon myself. No one will reject me as much as I reject myself. No one will betray me as much as I betray myself. This is where you take it up a level and go, these are the players around me that bring in this multi level understanding for the life that I'm supposed to experience, the threads that I'm supposed to heal, if you like, because I think back on how many times that I have sacrificed, sabotaged, betrayed my own needs, if you like, abandoned my own needs, rejected my own needs, all in play with the players around me that are choosing to teach me these life lessons. And I can see how many times that I've actually done it. Now, it takes moving away from the personal, coming into a little bit more emotional equilibrium, understanding with forgiveness and love the truth of what they're actually teaching me at a soul level, and bringing it into gratitude as well. None of that's easy. Seriously, I'm 54 years old. I'm having a whole lifetime of these experiences, and most of us are. But understand this also starts from conception. This also starts from birth. So understand in that genetic coding, your children, if you've had children, and their children, they're following a long lineage of complex learning, growth, soul level learning, ancestral key um, timelines, and programmed DNA understanding. So this is massive amount of learning that goes on during the earth train journey. So I always say to people, please understand if you think that you're not gaining anything from being here, or you don't know what your purpose is, then understand that a lot of your purpose is actually interwoven with what you're actually experiencing at a soul level, and at a human level, and at an ancestral level, and on and on and on. So nothing's ever quite as what it seems, and people's stories are so incredibly fascinating as well. As I went to the other side from the surf life, I realised that I had actually stored in me anger, resentment, frustration, all directed towards authority figures as well, or people that are far higher up the food chain. Now, that life I observed when I was in my 30s, and I remember thinking at the time, oh my gosh, this explains so much. This explains why I can instantaneously arc up. Now remember, that's just from one life. There's been multiple other lives that I've had where I have rubbed up against not wanting to be told what to do, and in my own childhood upbringing, not wanting to be told what to do. So there's kind of these mirror aspects and these growth aspects and learning aspects that actually come absolutely everywhere. And I know that if anyone lives in very close proximity to me, they do know that I do not like rules whatsoever, or feeling like I'm being square boxed into this equation, or this experience as well. So it's interesting to see that if you feel like that, and please understand and think, where can this actually come from? I hate being told what to do. Understand that it may have come from a parental learning or familial learning. However, it's probably coming from something deeper to do with the soul level learning as well. My point is, don't resent or think that yes, you are a major part of the equation. It's your unique, fingerprinted life experience that you're actually having, but don't underestimate the value of what you're actually learning, but start to understand why. The more you understand you, the more you look at your own growth, the more you're going to understand those people around you and what they've agreed to do for you, around you, to teach you, to help you to grow, to evolve in multiple levels. And as I said, the biggest challenge is to bring it back to love. And I'm just kind of having a chuckle to myself as well, because, in that lifetime, the lady of the keep, if you like, is actually my mother-in-law in this lifetime, and there's an innate amount of patience and tolerance and learning that has actually had to come into play as well, that has both frustrated me along the way because I haven't 100% understood it, or how complex it is until I've really started to do these investigations over the last 15 years, and how do you heal from it. And the key is, and I mentioned it in the previous video and I'll mention it again, the key is actually being able to have a degree of separation to be able to actually observe it. That's very, very hard to do when you're in the middle of a learning situation where you just desperately want this person to like you. Their role is not to like you, let alone love you. It's your role to love yourself in the face of what learning that they're actually bringing to you at exactly the same time. So it's been interesting if I choose any person around me to go back and have a look at, in my current soul group, to go back and have a look at, see where they've empowered me and where they've helped me. Every single person, there's been a space where there's been this interaction with them, and there's been some of the interactions have been really, really complex. So also imagine, I've just remembered, imagine my horror in teaching a workshop to do with past life regression at my house. With this amazing group of people, to suddenly spirit blindside me with the understanding that in each of their lifetimes, even though they've popped up around me as amazing people and clients, that I've actually killed all of them in various lifetimes, or been responsible for them poisoning, or been responsible for them dying in some way. That suddenly made the workshop really complex, and me going, oh my God, how do I actually bring this understanding into the workshop without them all looking at me sideways saying, oh, you're not only teaching us right at the moment, but you slaughtered us in a past life. So my point is, the connections are there. They can be subtle. Have an experience this lifetime where, an instance of the rebalancing between, like, perhaps me and my mother-in-law is me standing my ground and actually going, I acknowledge what your role is, and I'm really grateful for that, and I'll take the learning from it, but I won't actually have very much to do with you in this lifetime because I've learned enough. So there's understanding that we can actually give ourselves as well, and it is so subtle, and it can be just, you can meet somebody and just have the experience of just, thinking, why did that person blast into my life and blast out of my life? But if you sat down and thought about it, you would actually see the value of what they've actually brought to you and what understanding that you're actually giving yourself. So just before I close off on this video, understand this, and I want to reiterate, the threads that are to learn, and a lot of people are to learn, is abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. Now, those are really big ones, but think about it. Just think about this before I close this video off. Where do you abandon yourself? Where do you reject yourself? Where do you betray yourself? And I mean that by, and every day you could say that person's needs are way more important than mine. You just abandoned yourself, rejected yourself, and betrayed yourself by telling yourself you're not as worthy or as valuable as another person on the earth plane, and you are. So just have a think about it, because these videos are designed to make you think and make you understand. Again, they've asked me to reiterate, if you think that you're stuck with it, if there's a block that's stopping you getting back into love and forgiveness, because don't forget, you and the human body benefit by coming into emotional equilibrium, coming into understanding, coming into not taking everything personally. You get to live beyond abandoning yourself, beyond rejecting yourself, beyond betraying yourself, and come into harmonious living. So that is also part of the purpose of the earth plane as well, is to get to a point where you can actually look at yourself and say, I 100% love who I am. When you love who you are and you're in unity with yourself, and don't get me wrong, we'll be learning until we die, but if you can come into this equilibrium, you can join in unity with other people, because you're no longer judging them, you're no longer critiquing them, or judging yourself, or and critiquing yourself off what they do around you, or taking personally around you, to lead a very, very fulfilling life. I would like to help people to be able to do this. Take care of you.